that beautiful tape.
Yeah, I didn't bring my slate out, but that's all right. Alright, starting off with your name and introduction, and then roll right into what is the ADA. Okay? If you hear a red bug or a scratch at the door, you know you have to restart. Action!
Hi, I'm David Meihls, Principal Consultant of ADA Consulting of Indiana.
We do that.
And I'm here to, hi, I'm David Meihls, Principal Consultant of ADA Consulting of Indiana.
Alright, let's try to not get an air gap right there.
In my voice? Am I speaking?
You're gapping.
Okay.
And then also try not to hammer as soon as you
Okay.
start talking. Alright.
Good morning.
Up. And action.
Good morning. I'm David Meihls, Principal Consultant of ADA Consulting of Indiana.
Pause. No good mornings because you can watch this day, morning.
Okay.
Okay. Action.
I'm David Meihls, Principal Consultant of ADA Consulting of Indiana. We are here this morning to, I said morning.
Show me where you're looking. Yeah, okay. Hang on. Not until I say action. Action.
Hi, I'm David Meihls, Principal Consultant of ADA Consulting of Indiana, and we're here today to discuss the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Didn't know what you were gonna say.
No. I mean, that was a good introduction, right?
Yes, but I said to roll right into the first question, so.
Okay, so now I start right there, right?
Scene 3 Alpha, take 1, Mark. How's that? Alright. Action. What are some challenges you face working with your clients?
Well, by far, the largest challenge we have had with our company is comprehension. A general understanding or a basic understanding of the ADA. To use the term basic is probably not the right term. Most people want to make sure that their place of public accommodation or their programs or services are accessible to all individuals, even those with disabilities. They just don't understand what that means. So it's always the case that a part of our job includes the educational component, where we not only provide the services to our clients, making sure their programs and services are accessible, but it's teaching them that as they move forward and implement new programs or services over time, that they understand what guidelines to follow, how they can make a program or service accessible. And it's not always the case that you're able to make everything accessible for everybody. A specific client that comes to mind is we had a client at one time that provided a program to the public that was a blacksmithing class, and this was a program given by a nonprofit through a municipal facility, and I can't remember if it was a parks program or not, but nevertheless, it was basically a program where we had experienced members teaching children how to do metallurgy, how to use blast furnaces and use metal forging. And so working with that client, understanding that it's a dangerous procedure and process to begin with, and all types of hazards surround that, we don't necessarily look at a program like that and say, okay, well, we're going to look and see how we can make this accessible to everybody. We do the best that we can and say that for individuals in a wheelchair, that environment was too dangerous for someone to be in. Someone having a mobility disability and didn't have feeling on, let's say, the lower half of their body, much like I do, that would be impractical to make that program accessible for someone like myself, wheeling around in a wheelchair where there's hot metal flying, my tires could burn, myself could burn, and it would be a danger not only to me, but I could be a danger to other individuals that's in that program that doesn't have a disability. So what we look at is, how can we make this accessible to the greatest extent possible? Can we make this program accessible to someone who's hearing impaired? I think by use of translators or sign language interpreters, I believe that would be totally feasible to make the program accessible to someone who had a hearing impairment. Can we make that program accessible to someone who has a visual impairment? I think that would be a little bit more challenging, but we'd have to look into that.
And those who squander their earthly time, talents, and resources will miss out on those rewards.
Scene 1 Charlie, take 1, Mark. These fans are so loud.
who's our primary client base, and what do we do for them. Stop!
I'm gonna say action and do the question. Action. What does ADA Consulting of Indiana as a company do for their clients?
We primarily help our clients ensure that they operate within the rules and regulations and guidelines of the Americans with Disabilities Act. We also consult on Fair Housing Act guidelines, the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. You might want to cut that part.
Cut.
Not sure on the date on that. What about the mic?
Doesn't matter for this. Scene 1A, take 3. You know what? Actually, this is. Scene 1A, take 3. Mark. Know what you're saying?
Not really.
Introduction. What is the ADA?
Okay.
Roll right into it, nice and smooth, fluent, right? Try to sell it.
Okay.
Instead of telling someone a story, try to sell it a little bit. Action.
Hi, I'm David Meihls, Principal Consultant of ADA Consulting of Indiana. We're here today to discuss the Americans with Disabilities Act and how ADA Consulting of Indiana can help your company or organization not only understand what the ADA is, but how it can help improve your way of doing business and make sure that your products and services are accessible to all individuals, including those with disabilities. The ADA is a comprehensive civil rights legislation. It is federal law, and it covers local and state government entities, Title III entities, which would be places of public accommodation, and telecommunications, and even websites. Today we'd like to discuss how ADA Consulting of Indiana can help you and your company to ensure that even those individuals with disabilities are provided the luxury of your services.
Cut. Scene 1B, take 1. Mark. Know what you're saying? Action.
The ADA was signed into law January 26 of 1990. It became effective 18 months thereafter on July 26 of 1991. It required companies as well as local states and governments to systematically review their policies, procedures, and generally the way they did business. It had implications and not only the policies and procedures, but for the built environment as well. It establishes standards which, when followed, allows a company to ensure that their place of public accommodation or local or state government indeed.
Cut. Scene 3A, take 3. Mark. action, what are some issues that you face working with your clients?
By far, it's been the issue of education. Most of our clients can understand that the built environment has to be accessible for people with mobility disabilities, such as providing accessible parking or a ramp leading to the front door of their facility so that someone can get in. What's been a little bit more challenging is understanding how to make programs and services accessible that aren't necessarily a built environment or would ever be a built environment for someone with a disability, that we'd be able to alter and make ultimately accessible for someone with a mobility disability. In other words, let's take for instance boating. A boat dock, a general boat dock, you think, well, how can we make that accessible for someone with a disability? Well, there are actually designs that are relatively new that have been designed for a person in specifically a wheelchair to be able to wheel up to a canoe launch or a kayak launch. The person can get out of their wheelchair, transfer to the kayak or canoe, and the way that it's designed, the person then with the disability, once they're in the kayak or canoe, can get into the water without the help or use of any type of assistance, and then have the experience in the water, and then even ultimately get back out of the water and back in their wheelchair without the assistance of anybody. And when we're able to work with clients and get them to understand that having accessible programs and services is and does mean more than just ensuring your built environment does not have architectural barriers there, then we feel we've won, and that's a win for everyone. Most of our clients want to do the right thing. They just don't know what that means. So education has been the largest hurdle for us to overcome, whether it's a program or service for fishing or ice skating or parks and playgrounds, trail systems. These are all challenges, and with every client, new and individual challenges are always brought forward to us. So being able to think outside of the box and understand there's always more than one way to make a program or a service accessible, it's been really exciting, really. We appreciate the opportunities that we've been given up to this point working with our clients, and we treat every issue as if it is a priority one issue, and we do our very best to help our clients ultimately ensure that in the end, after they've hired ADA Consulting of Indiana, that your programs, your services, and your products, your business, is in compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act, Title VI of the Rehabilitation Act of 1964, Section 504 of, okay, I screwed that up, so you'll have to cut that. Just after the Americans with Disabilities Act, just cut it.
It's not that easy. Scene 2, Alpha, take 1. Mark. Go lay down. Go. Alright, you understand?
No, you gotta ask a question.
What's the question? Something about your company or
Well, what's some of the highlights, I guess, of what our company has done since we started?
yeah. Alright. Action. What are the highlights of your company?
Well, since our company started in the fall of 2011, we've been very fortunate to have some wonderful clients. Specifically, working with municipalities has been very rewarding. When we come into working with a new client and we look at the facilities that they have and the condition that they are existing in, many of their facilities are not accessible, including their parks. So let's just take parks for an example. When we come in working with a client for the first time, we very often find things like pea gravel still in their playground area. And that's very difficult for a person having a mobility disability to be able to use that park playground surface. So we work with the client, we explain to them what the requirements are, what the guidelines are, and we identify these things being architectural barriers. Pea gravel, for instance, in this scenario is considered an architectural barrier. So we teach the client to remove that and then provide an accessible route leading to the playground, changing that pea gravel out to an acceptable surface, something like engineered wood mulch, and then thereby allowing a person with a disability to be able to not only have access to the playground, but in and around the playground to actually get to the swing set or whatever those ground play components may consist of. So when we look at providing or changing the existing built environment from a non-accessible environment to an accessible environment, it becomes very rewarding, often knowing that the people we're helping the most we may never actually see or meet, but understanding that a playground wasn't compliant before with the regulations and wasn't accessible in any way, there's a very rewarding feeling knowing after we leave that we've been able to make our mark and make at least a small corner of that municipality, city, town, local government accessible.
Cut. Take two. Scene 1A, take two. Action.
Hi, I'm David Meihls, Principal Consultant of ADA Consulting of Indiana, and we're here today to discuss the Americans with Disabilities Act. The Americans with Disabilities Act is a comprehensive civil rights legislation. It is a federal law that provides protections to individuals with disabilities and offers them civil rights, which ultimately allows them to have the same life, liberties, and pursuit of happiness that an able-bodied person would as well.
Cut. Scene 1B, take two. Mark. Alright, I'm going to say action and then I'm going to ask you a question. Action. When was the ADA signed into law?
The ADA was signed into law January 26th of 1990. It became effective 18 months later on July 26, 1991. It required local and state governments as well as places of a public accommodation to review their policies, procedures, and practices in order to make sure that their products and services were provided in accordance with the regulations therein, ensuring that their services were accessible to all individuals, including those with disabilities. It also had implications and regulations for the built environment. So what it required was business owners under Title III of the Americans with Disabilities Act to review their facilities and ensure that architectural barriers did not exist within those facilities. So it became a regulatory process that was mandated by the ADA for all places of a public accommodation to look at their existing facilities, identify architectural barriers, and then put together a plan to remove these architectural barriers, ensuring compliance with the rules and regulations of the ADA.
Good. Scene 1, Charlie. Take 2, Mark. Action. What does ADA Consulting as a company do for their clients?
Essentially, we are accessibility specialists. Technically, we provide guidance on how to operate your business or municipality within the guidelines and parameters of the Americans with Disabilities Act, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. We also provide guidance on how an organization can operate within the parameters of Title VI of the 1964 Discrimination Act. We are trail assessors of the Universal Trail Assessment process. We provide guidance in accordance with the Fair Housing Act in regards to accessibility for multifamily homes. And essentially we just we help companies and local governments or municipalities to operate in accordance with the laws and standards put forth by those civil rights acts.
Good. Whoa. Scene 1D, take 1, Mark. Dang it. Scene 1 Delta, take 1, Mark. Action. What specifically do you do for your clients?
Well, our primary client base would be local or municipal government entities. And with one of them being used as an example, what we first do is we follow the guidelines of the ADA, which requires a municipality to go through a 13-step process, a checklist, if you will, to ensure that if you go through all 13 elements, that indeed you are operating within the guidelines of the ADA and ensuring that your programs, procedures, services, and facilities are all in accordance with those guidelines of the Act. we first start by looking at the products and services offered by an entity. For instance, if we have a local municipality that's just entering into a new computer system, which allows them to take payments over the internet for services provided by the municipal, let's say electricity bills. We make sure that the new software program is usable to individuals with disabilities, including those who would use a screen reader, someone who had a visual impairment. We also have training as components of our services, where we may take law enforcement officers and we teach them how to use effective communication for individuals with disabilities, how to, in the event that they need a translator or a sign language interpreter, we would give them guidance and procedures on establishing this type of information so that they are operating in accordance with the guidelines of the ADA. When it comes to the built environment, a municipality would have, most generally, a large list of facilities that's owned and operated by that municipality. We would have to evaluate each facility on an individual basis, beginning in the parking lot, leading from the parking lot. We look at exterior accessible routes and make sure that we have an accessible route from that parking lot to the front door. We go inside the facility. We would make sure checkout counters and any services provided by that entity or any programs provided by that entity would be inclusive and not have what's considered architectural barriers in the built environment. If we find these architectural barriers as a part of the 13-step process required by the ADA, we categorize these individually with a priority, and we put them in a tracking process so that these architectural barriers can be ultimately removed, and then ultimately allowing the client to be operating within the guidelines of the ADA, providing accessible services to all individuals, regardless of disabilities.
Cut. Scene 3, Alpha, take 2. Mark. Go lay down. Go. Action. What issues do you run into working through clients? Or is that the question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Comprehension of what the ADA is and what are the implications to a specific client has always been the largest hurdle to overcome for us as a company when we're working with individual clients. It's a vast civil rights legislation that is not well understood by the general public or the private sector. Most clients can understand the implications that the ADA has in the built environment. What do I have to do to my facility to make it accessible to someone who has a mobility issue? It becomes a little more challenging when you are working with, let's say, a restaurant discussing the issue of effective communication with the staff. In other words, teaching the staff members to understand if somebody came in that had a visual impairment, that the waiter or the waitress would be required to read what the menu says, or provide to a person with a visual impairment, having a visual impairment as a disability. So they either provide that service to read and what the menu has for the person, or provide Braille documents, provide a menu in Braille, or we teach staff members how to identify the difference between a service animal versus a comfort animal. The ADA has legislation that provides protections for individuals needing service animals, and a service animal has clear definitions under the ADA of what it means to be a service animal. First of all, it's either a dog or a miniature horse. There is no such thing as a service animal monkey or a peacock or a service animal cat. It's either a dog or a horse, and the specific animal has been trained to perform specific tasks for a person with a disability. And so it's always issues like this that has been more challenging to teach our clients, that there's more to the ADA than just building a ramp for your facility or having an accessible parking space in your parking lot. A recent client of ours, we were able to teach them how to make their program of ice skating accessible. And we did that understanding that, the program challenges are always going to be there, but thinking outside the box, how can we make this accessible to children or even adults with mobility issues? And so we ultimately researched and found there are ice sleds for children who can be placed in an ice sled. Let's say having a mobility disability, they can be placed in this ice sled, and then their parent can push them around the ice rink. An adult can get in something similar to this and then push themselves around by means of adaptive equipment, such as small sticks that help them propel themselves around the rink. Another example would be accessible kayaking or boating. When we work with a municipal or local government who has established boat docks within local public waterways, we want to make sure that those boat ramps and boat docks are accessible to individuals with disabilities as well. So we work with clients and teaching them how to understand, first of all, there are other ways. There's always more than one way to make your program accessible. It's never just set in stone. So each individual client brings their own unique challenges and characteristics for each program and each problem. And I think that's probably been and will continue to be a challenge moving forward. But we accept these challenges, and we're very thankful to have our clients who understand that it's not only law to do these things in accordance with the ADA, but it's generally the right thing to do. And most of our clients, all of our clients, have always taken the approach that we're willing to go above and beyond to ensure that our programs and services are available to all individuals, regardless of their abilities or disabilities.
Cut. Great. Action.
My name is David Meihls, and I am 45 years old. I'm principal consultant of ADA Consulting of Indiana. We established the company in the fall of 2011, having prior experience in the architectural and engineering world as a draftsman for 25 plus years, has ultimately led me into this transition from the design and engineering world into the civil rights realm of accessibility. And we're very thankful and happy to be in this situation. It is my personal and unique background and experience that has given me the confidence to move in this direction, to be an ADA consultant, and to feel confident that we can help individuals have a better understanding of what the rules and regulations require. I was in an accident approximately 25 years ago. It was August 28th of 1994 that I was, as a 20-year-old young man, I was swimming at a kind of a rock pit environment. There was a small ledge about 8 feet off of the ground, and I decided, after jumping off of it several times forward, diving into the water, I decided that that wasn't challenging enough, so I wanted to turn around and do a back dive. And in doing so, ultimately led to me hitting my head in a shallow area of the water below, and I broke my neck at the C7 level, rendering me a quadriplegic from basically the chest down. I've been very thankful to have been given the opportunities since I was hurt. I was still able to work and provide drafting services to architects and engineers in the built environment. And it was when I was hurt, the ADA had only been in law 3 years, approximately 3 years prior to my injury. And I happened to live in a state, Florida, which incorporated the ADA into law immediately. So the work that I was providing for architects and engineers had to conform and adhere to the regulations and the guidelines of the ADA. Not every state has done that, and now we're in Indiana, ADA Consultants of Indiana. We work all over the United States, but we are based here in Indiana. Indiana is a state that did not incorporate the ADA into law. So over the past 30 years now, it's been a very difficult law to understand and comprehend, especially in states that did not include it as building code. So it's been this unique background that my professional experience, combined with my personal experience just in life, having to go through life after being 20 years old in a wheelchair, has given me a unique combination that allows me to understand the importance of complying with the ADA.
We can go ahead and cut because your phone rang. So we're good.